Welcome to the Big Book Roundtable in the RICO 12 family of recovery resources targeted at people from all backgrounds, faiths, and places dealing with addictions of all varieties. RICO 12 is a resource for anybody out there seeking a solution to whatever is ailing them. And we use the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous to do that as we read line by line, paragraph by paragraph through this and dive deep into it. I'm Justin B. I'm a child of an all-powerful and all-loving God and a multidisciplinary addict living in miraculous recovery here in Spokane, Washington, and I'm blessed to be the moderator of this roundtable. I'm joined today by David G. and Nikki M., who are my cohorts in crime around this table, and I'm super grateful to be with them. David, why don't you come off mute and say hi for a minute, and then we'll go to Nikki after that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Justin, for your service as always, man. You're just a spearhead, and I love you, man. Thank you so much. I'm David G. I'm an alcoholic addict of many sorts, and I've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind through the directions as outlined the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. The Spirit has revealed himself to me, and it's just a beautiful life. And I'm so grateful to be here with Miss Nikki. Love her so much and anxious to jump in today. So thank you.
Thank you, David. Nikki, come say hi.
Hi, everybody. If you can't see me, I got a big smile on my face because I'm being loved up by, these spearheads of God that I'm with. And I'm also a spearhead. I'm just so grateful in this moment. This is a bright spot, getting together into this solution and just being in God's love and light. I'm really just grateful. Thank you, everybody. And thanks for loving me, you guys.
Thank you, Nikki. This is such a really cool little fellowship we have here. And, what we're doing, I'm hearing from many people is really helpful for them as they are walking through the Big Book and walking with others through the Big Book to just see and feel and understand things a little bit differently as we set aside those. I love the concept of the set aside prayer, and we take this into pretty much everything we do. All right. So for the last while, we have been going through chapter 5, how it works, and man, so much good stuff we found in there. And today we finished up chapter 5. We're jumping into chapter 6, into action, which starts on page 72 of your 4th edition of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. Today, we're just going to cover a couple of paragraphs and dive deep into these paragraphs here on page 72 up through the top of page 73, which ends with until they told someone else all their life story. So I'm going to go ahead and read these couple of paragraphs, and then we will get into discussing them and diving deep into them. Here we go. Chapter 6, into action. Having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? We've been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path. We have admitted certain defects. We have ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is. We have put our finger on the weak items in our personal inventory. Now these are about to be cast out. This requires action on our part, which, when completed, will mean that we have admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects. This brings us to the 5th step in the program of recovery mentioned in the preceding chapter. This is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects with another person. We think we have done well enough in admitting these things to ourselves. There is doubt about that. In actual practice, we usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further. We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so. The best reason first. If we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. Time after time, newcomers have tried to keep them to themselves certain facts about their lives. Trying to avoid this humbling experience, they have turned to easier methods. Almost invariably, they got drunk. Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. We think the reason is that they never completed their house cleaning. They took inventory all right, but hung on to some of the worst items in stock. They only thought they had lost their egoism and fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves, but they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story. Okay, so in those couple of paragraphs there, we're getting deep into the reasons why it's so important to follow up on that inventory that we've talked about in this last chapter and dive into the step 5 portion. So, David, why don't you take us through this and share with us some of the things that jump out at you?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, just very grateful to be here. We are now in the directions to the 5th step in the program of recovery. You know, it says right there in the very first what is that, 5 words, having made our personal inventory. I had my guys put a question mark there. You know, have you made it? I mean, did you half-ass it? Have you really made this personal inventory? And if you have, here's the reason you did it. We've been trying to get a new attitude and a new relationship with our Creator. And that's really the only reason for the 4th step, because the previous chapters have showed us how self has defeated us. And this is what the problem is, and that we've been unable to identify that. So because we thought it was us doing all this craziness. And of course, we were taking the action, but we were definitely not responsible for the thought system that led up to that. And so the reason for the inventory was so that I could get a new attitude and a new relationship. It's not that I didn't have a relationship. It's that I needed a new one, because obviously the old one wasn't working out too good for me. That's why the first 2 words in the 2nd step says came to. That's past tense. We had already came to a belief of some kind, but come to find out we were believing in worshiping the wrong thing, and it turned out to be disastrous for most of us. So we want a new relationship with the Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path, which is self. And we find that in our 4th column of inventory. When we've done the 4th column, if we really paid attention, we've seen the obstacles of selfishness, dishonesty, resentment, fear. These pop up over and over and over. In our 3rd column, we really look closely at pride, self-esteem, security, ambition, personal and sex relationships, you know, pocketbook. And so we have omitted certain defects, and we did that in that 4th column of the inventory. So we've ascertained in a rough way what the trouble is. We've put our finger on the weak items. That was in column 4 as well. Now these are about to be cast out. And this is probably, and I say this every page, but this is probably the greatest promise in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous for me. Because where are these being cast out from? From my consciousness. And this is going to allow me to improve conscious contact with God as I understood Him. So if you'll hold right there for just a second and flip back to page 27, we want to see to where this experience happened to Roland. And we went through this some episodes ago. In the middle of the page, you know, Roland's hopeless. Hell, he's drank again after a year or so. He's come back and he's asked you, man, why can't I recover? And so the doctor tells him, you know, I've seen these experiences. To me, the occurrences are phenomena. But here's what it looks like. It's the nature of a huge emotional displacement rearrangement. This is the self, idea, emotions, attitudes, which were once the guiding force. You remember we turned them 2 words around, force is guiding. But look at this. The lives of these men are suddenly cast, keep your eye on that word, to one side, and a completely new set comes in and begin to dominate them. And if you have done this work up to this point, the way that the book has outlined it to be done, then when you get back over here to 72, where we're at, he's saying now these are about to be cast out, these ideas, these emotions, these attitudes, these concepts, beliefs that has utterly defeated you. See, we've been focused on sex and love relationships and food and alcohol and drugs. And yes, that's something that's in our face. We got to deal with that. But that's not what lies behind it. It's the self. And so this is about to be cast out. There can be no greater promise than this in the book. There just can't be. And so it says, but this is important. Look at this 2nd paragraph. This is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects with another person. We usually just read on right through that. So when I sat down this last time and I've done hundreds of 5th steps through the years I've been here. But this last time I sat down, I did like I always did. I just started unloading all this filth and all this nasty and dirty stuff. And the guy shut me down. He was like, I want to hear that. So we went on a little while and I started it again, just unloading. He's like, I don't want to hear that. And I remember getting upset, and I said, "Well, why in the hell am I here? Why the hell am I here?" And he said, "Obviously, you haven't read that sentence very carefully." He said, "Look at that. This is perhaps difficult, especially discussing our defects, not your filth, not all of that shit. That needs to be vented, I'm sure, and you can do that with somebody. But I'm more interested in what drove you to do the filth, and that's the defects. So when you see the word discussing there, the discussion portion of our fifth step is going to be your defects, not your filth. And for the first time, man, this step came alive to me in a way that I'd never seen it before. So we think we've done well in admitting these things to ourselves, but there's doubt about that. Man, I can lie to myself. I promise you I can. Or self can lie to me and I'll believe it. So that solitary self-appraisal, small s, that's insufficient. We need to go further. We're going to be more reconciled in discussing ourselves with another person. For me, God, ourselves, and another human being is the very first attempt in this program for me to reconnect my trust in the outer world with another man, because here is where it brings me together, and I get to connect with him and God. It's a powerful, powerful step. So, as you read on through it, it talks about if you skip the step, you're probably not going to overcome drinking or drugging or whatever it is. Newcomers try to keep these facts, about their lives, trying to avoid the humble experience. We turn to easier methods, meetings, church, all this other stuff. I want to do all that, but I'm not going to. I really don't want to get honest with somebody. I really don't want you to know what I've been doing inside the fellowship. I'm sober, hiding behind a badge of a lot of years of sobriety, but there's some iniquities going on that I'd rather you not know about. You know what I'm saying? So, once you've had this experience and you put a basket over that lamp and dim your light that's been given to you through the creator of the universe, and you hide that under the bed, trust me, that darkness is going to come to light. When it does, we're going to be exposed. And that's been my experience. So having preserved with the rest of the program, top of 73, which is the first 4 steps, why'd I fall? Well, I never completed it. I took the inventory, but I hung on to a lot of the items on the inside of me. And look at the word thought. Look at how he italicizes that. That's self. Self only allowed us to think we had lost egoism and fear. Self only allowed us to think we had humbled ourselves, but we really hadn't learned humility, fearlessness, any of that. And I really wanted to zone in on this real quick, and I'll shut up. All our life story. We're not talking about sitting down here writing your life story out like they do in treatment centers. We're talking about your life as it relates to what you've done through your 4th step. This is so important. So, it's, I like it talks about most lead the double life. And I've done that even in sobriety, been the actor. I've got so much stuff that I want other people to see and all this. But anyway, that's for another episode. But man, this is so important. And the key behind this all is don't hold secrets. Secrets is what kill us. I had a sponsor one time, and he told me this. He said, "David, you can do anything you want to do. You just can't keep it a secret." I said, "What do you mean by that?" He said, "You enjoy watching porn?" I said, "I do." He said, "Okay, I give you permission. Go ahead and do that." I was like, "Really? Cool." He said, "Hang on. There's a condition. Can't keep it a secret. I want you to invite your grandkids out to watch it with you." And I was like, "Hell no." He was like, "Can't keep no secrets." And he said, "You want to run around on your wife?" He said, "I give you full permission to do that as your sponsor." And I was like, "Really?" He said, "You just got to run it by her first. And if she's okay with it, then get after it." That ain't going to happen. And really what he was trying to tell me, other than all that, is it's the secrets that kill you, David. I mean, yeah, the actions are going to, but it's the stuff that leads you. Just like that man said, I don't want to hear your filth. I want to hear what drove you to do your filth. It's the secrets. So step 5 exposes all of that. Thanks for letting me share, Justin. Good to be.
Yeah, Dave, thank you so much. And some powerful things you shared there. I'm really looking forward to diving a little bit deeper into those. Nikki, why don't you go through this and talk to us a little bit about the things that are meaningful to you and jumped out at you?
Thank you. And David, thank you so much. I mean, I just grow. I mean, you're my sponsor and you know it, even though we don't have an official title here. Into action. See, I always tell people that says into action. It doesn't just say we read the steps. It doesn't say we just sit around and read the book. And having made it personal, I always have my sponsees put their initials right there, personal. Mine says NM, because I like to take everyone's inventory, and I have a big yes. And it says, a new attitude. That's what we're doing here. We're trying to get a new attitude, God's will, a new relationship, point to point, constantly reaching for God with our creator. Like, think about it. No one's looking for God. We're looking for power. A lot of people come in here and creator and God, and we've talked about it. And David gave us a wonderful exercise about terms. This is about someone looking for power and to discover the obstacles. What is blocking me from this power? And I want to read the fifth step, because it doesn't say, it says, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature. See, it doesn't say, I love what David went into. It doesn't say what we did. It's why, your exact nature. Why did you do that? Because you're lazy, because you're lustful, because you're so selfish and you're so dishonest, Nikki. See, those are the obstacles. It's not like, it's not the bottle of the booze. It's not the men. It's not the money. It's not my government. It's my selfishness and self-centeredness. And I admitted certain defects, and I ascertained, I understand. See, I understand what the trouble is now. It's this old belief system, this self. It's not my mommy. It's not my daddy. It's not my curly hair. And weak items. See, it says we put a finger on our weak items. Everyone wants to give me an encyclopedia the size. There was a book, I think it's called Hawaii. It was written a long time ago. It's like 1,000 pages. It's like a romance novel. No, I don't need to read 1,000 pages. Your weak items in your inventory now. And these are keywords too. Now, like really fast. Doesn't happen, if you do this properly, it can be cast out real fast. And thank you, David, taking us to page 27. And it's action. I'll always say, well, give me 3 action items that you're into, because it doesn't say these are the steps we read and talked about. It says these are the steps we took. And when completed, I've admitted to God, a God of my own understanding. I don't have a punishing God, because remember in step 2, it says a loving, powerful hand of God is what we're getting towards. So I have admitted to a loving God who's forgiving, to myself. And here it is, another human being. And it will tell us later when we read here, they need to be spiritually fit. I'm not telling my untreated Al-Anon mom or my best friend. See, that's where people go real wrong here. Another human being. My line out says a BBS, a big book sponsor. And the exact nature is not what I did. It's why, Nikki. You did it because you're lazy, because you hate yourself. And I love this too. Everyone's like, this is for a 5th step. No, this is a life instruction book, everybody. This is perhaps difficult, discussing our defects with another person. Everybody, it's not if you pick the right person. Take your time. We get gifts here. Discernment. Stop running to your untreated co-workers, to your untreated Al-Anon sister. Stop it. And I love a solitary self. It's I can't do this alone. We read it in the beginning of the book. We, men and women of Alcoholics Anonymous. And if we skip this vital step, what vital step? This vital step of admitting why, not what, why we do what we do. And easier, softer methods. There are no easier, softer methods, Justin. What are your easier, softer methods? Therapy, moving, having another baby and forgetting about the one you had before, Nikki. No, there are no easier, softer methods here. I deliberately live the lie, because the lie is less painful than living the truth. I know a lot of people who deliberately live the lie because living the truth is too painful. And I gotta, and being a sponsor too, Justin, I gotta honor and listen to a 5th step. I gotta learn to be quiet, and this is all that top paragraph on page 73. It's about relapse. And if you're relapsing out there, it's because you never completed your house cleaning. And there's a plethora of reasons that you could be relapsing, but one of my sponsors always takes me here. Nikki, they never completed their housekeeping. They never completed their housekeeping. They took inventory, but they never completed their housekeeping. It says thoroughly. We beg you to be thorough from the start. And this happened to me recently. I'm throwing my life into the ground because I have not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty. And this is why I'm at the table with you, David, because I always just, David, you have such a powerful story. Like you said recently, I was on one of our last podcasts. You're like, it's just the last 2 years you've been waking up. So I'm like, I'm only in year 12. I have some time. And it's not a comparison here, everybody, because our behavior patterns vary. But I want what David has. And it's taken him years, and I love that, to learn humility, fearlessness, and honesty. So I'm right where I need to be. That cliche, you're as sick as your secrets. It's true. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nikki. There's so much good stuff in here, and I'm grateful for you two walking through that and pointing out a couple things. I got a question for you, David. You talked about when you sat down with your sponsor here the last time through in step 5, and you were dumping all of your junk on him. He says, "I don't want to hear that. Let's talk. Let's look at this sentence: discussing our defects with another person and focusing on that." And I want to talk a little bit about, teach me a little bit, David, because the end of this reading that we did has told someone all their life story. What is the difference between sharing about defects and all their life story? Why is that in my mind, I think that's contradictory. Talk to me about how it makes sense.
Yeah, and that's a really good question, because it does, talk about all of our life story, but it doesn't talk about all of our life drama in that story. And there's a big difference between that too. And what I can do is, when I start running off in the drama of my life story, it gets away from my story and what exactly caused that to happen to me. And all of a sudden, self will jump in there and begin to tell the story the way that it sees it. So he was smart enough to stick to the letter of the book and say, no, we're going to focus only on the defects that caused this behavior, more than I'm interested in all of that stuff, because, I can just run on and on with that whenever I get started at that. And a lot of people do that even in meetings. You'll hear that in meetings that you go to. They'll just run off with that forever. And really that really there's no fruit there for me. It needs to be what we're doing here. And so I can remember some of the things that I had down of how bad of a father I was, and how I really didn't take care of my children. And I can remember after every one, he'd say, "Is that true?" I'm like, "Well, yeah." He's, "Well, didn't you work? Wasn't you making over 6 figures a year at that time?" And it's like, "Well, yeah." And he said, "You got a pretty nice home there." And he said, "So you were taken care of, you were just emotionally absent." I was like, holy shit, I never looked at that. I just thought I was a bad father. Yeah. And, I'm compartmentalizing, what makes me a good father and what don't. What makes me a good father is being present with my son, teaching him things that he needs to know about being a man. But I can't do that because I'm caught up into my own crap. Selfishness has overtaken me, and I'm teaching him things that are dishonest, and because that's the way I'm living. So you see how all them things are feeding into that. And once I was able to see that, wow, it was just very powerful, because had it been a solitary self-appraisal, that's exactly what I would have believed, is that, I was not a good father. Well, in some areas I wasn't, but in more of the areas I was. My son and I are able to sit down today. I finally have a relationship with every one of my kids again. I had 2 daughters that was adopted. I had a son that drowned, one that lived, and then my wife, has a son. And just until recently, 3 out of the 4 I'd made amends, and there was one left. And she lives not too far away, and I've been praying. It was like, I'd said some really mean things to her a few years ago whenever I was so sick. And God brought that relationship back to me in the last 3 months. He brought that back. I was able to make amends for that and said, look, I don't care what happened. I just need you to know that I was wrong, and I know that I was wrong, and I would love to rebuild our relationship, and I'll be damned if it hasn't started to happen. So, I had to admit my selfishness. I had to look at my defects. I had to discuss the exact nature of my defects, not go into a lot of detail, but I needed to say, look, I see where my selfishness has caused this. I said unloving things, unkind things. I was dishonest in my thinking. And she really took to that, accepted the apology, and man, I've got a relationship with all of my kids today. But what I had written on that paper was, I wasn't a good dad to any of them. And I was through those years. So just certain areas, but it's powerful. It's very powerful.
Yeah. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, David, for sharing that miracle. I love that. And focusing on, these, the defects rather than the drama behind it, and just saying I was wrong in those defects. Beautiful. Nikki, question I have for you. I've heard you talk about this a few times before, but I think hearing it again and diving a little bit deeper, maybe a couple of different angles will be really helpful to talk to the right person, the right people, and not just vomit it out on, our untreated, whoever it may be. Talk to us a little bit more about why that's so important to share our, this inventory with the right person.
Okay, well, we're going to read, I think on pages coming up on 74, 75, it says say, talk to the right person. And why is it important? I've talked to my mom and she's told my business, and it's caused a resentment. And guess what? I die on a resentment. Okay. So see, I can't afford that. I can't afford to die on a resentment. I'm armed with the facts. So I no longer tell my mother, because remember what the book says. We read it very carefully, you guys. On page 60, it says, any life run on self-will can hardly be a success. So as an observer, as a child of God, I can walk. I've got a little power. Remember, we tap power here, and I can watch, and I can see that anybody's life, it doesn't say just Nikki's life in the book. It says any life on page 60, run on self-will can hardly be a success. So I need to talk to a person whose life is not run on self-will, because then it will be a success, whatever we're talking about. If I'm talking to somebody whose life is not aligned with these morals, values, hopes, goals, dreams, these spiritual principles, this conversation, the advice, recently I didn't talk to the right person. And you know what? I don't want to get crazy on here. It's destroyed a relationship that I cared the most about. I didn't talk to the right person. And then I followed their advice, which was hysterical. Didn't we read that on the previous page? We avoid hysterical thinking and advice. So I don't follow these instructions because I love this person. I know they did not mean to do that. I was hysterical. I called them. They're my friend in program, but that wasn't the right person. And it wasn't their duty to receive it, because this person didn't understand and they were affected. And so what's a properly appointed authority? Well, I need to go to someone who screams the big book in those minutes, or even my pastor would have been good. Somebody who is connected to this power. See, I don't want you coming to me sponsy after you just relapse and you say, Nikki, I've slept with my ex and I think I'm pregnant and I think I have, things all over my vagina. Well, guess what? I'm not a doctor. I'm not the properly appointed authority. I will talk to you about why did you call your ex? Why did you do that? Because you're selfish, because you're self-loathing, because you're so lustful, you couldn't go 2 weeks without picking up the phone. But if you think you have a problem like that, you need to get to a doctor. I am not the properly appointed authority for that. You robbed a bank, go to a lawyer. See, those whose duty it is to receive it. So thank you for asking me now, what can I do? This is how God always works. This is a wonderful teaching tool. This experience has been like, everyone talk to the right person always, because if you don't, you like me can just flush your life into the toilet and go, there it is, folks. I love experience, strength, and hope. It really does help other people in the room. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. Yeah. let's go into takeaways. And my takeaway today, and David, I loved how you talked about you just can't keep a secret. Go ahead, do these things. You got full permission, but share it with your grandkids. Ask, talk to your wife before you make the decision about doing those things. Whatever that is, I can't keep secrets because those secrets will kill me. And that's my takeaway from this. How about you, Nikki? What's your takeaway from this conversation?
Well, I smoke, I swear, and I scroll my life away. So there's my honesty. And this is not an overnight matter. And those things will be removed on God's timing. So my takeaway is that, hey, we're not saints. The big shit has been removed, and I'm not going anywhere or I'll die. Thank you.
Thanks, Nikki. How about you, David? What's the takeaway for you?
I think it's service and love. It really is. I was doing that in my two-way prayer this morning. That's what came to me. If I'm not holding secrets, like you said, then I'm being honest. And if I'm being honest, then I'm going to be more loving. And if I'm more loving, I'm going to be more unselfish. And these are just the things that are pointed out here, especially in this step. It's about getting honest with someone else for the first time in my life, really letting you see who I am, who I really, really am. And then, it's a beautiful experience. I love Nikki's share, about the right person. And it's so true, because in these next episodes, what we're going to begin to see is through this book and these pages and these sentences is how to qualify that man. Now, many would say, oh, bullshit, that's our sponsor. That's the way it goes. And that, yeah, you are right. But you know what? Just because you led me through the inventory, you might not be qualified to hear some of the things I'm about to tell. And if you're not, then I need to find somebody who is. And so the book is going to show us exactly how to qualify that man in these instructions for the fifth step. It's very, very powerful what's coming up. So thank you, guys. It's an honor to be here today.
Thank you, David. And I'm looking forward to walking through those upcoming pages and seeing that. Thank you all for joining with us. To learn more about Rico 12 and what we're doing and how you can support these projects, go to rico12.com, check us out, listen to the other podcasts we have, and to see what projects David and Nikki are doing. We've got some links in the show notes, so you can follow some of those things. Guys, join with us in the fellowship of the Spirit and come trudge this adventurous and amazing road of happy destiny with us. Work it. You are worth it.